Well, good morning and welcome to our reflection for Lent on this Friday, the 12th of March. My name's Carolyn Lucas and I'm a minister across the Tolworth Hook and Surbiton Team Ministries. And it's a pleasure to be with you again this morning. Today we're going to think a little bit about what it means to be vulnerable. I don't think vulnerability is something that the majority of us look for or want or even accept very easily. We don't like being vulnerable. It takes us away from any sense of control. It can feel as if we're at the mercy of others. But today's reflection helps us to think a little bit more about how being vulnerable or making ourselves vulnerable may change significantly our interactions with other people. We're going to read a few verses from John chapter 4. The whole story is the story of Jesus meeting the Samaritan woman at the well. And as we reflect on verses 7 to 10, we're going to think about how Jesus in this situation made himself more vulnerable and how that impacted on how he communicated with the woman. So John chapter 4 and verses 7 to 10. A Samaritan woman came to draw water. And Jesus said to her, "Give me a drink," because his disciples had gone to the city to buy food. The Samaritan woman said to him, "How is it that you, a Jew, ask a drink of me, a woman of Samaria?" Jews do not share things in common with Samaritans. Jesus answered her, "If you knew the gift of God and who it is that is saying to you, 'Give me a drink,' you would have asked him, and he would have given you living water." If you have time, do read the whole story, because we're really only looking at the beginning of it today. There's something of a power imbalance in the relationship between Jesus and this Samaritan woman. Jesus is a man. He's a Jew. He's a teacher who has a number of followers. He's a speaker who has already commanded large crowds. The woman who he is speaking with is a woman who lives in a hugely patriarchal society. She's a Samaritan in a society that saw Samaritans as worthy of being discriminated against. She's a woman who'd been married multiple times in a culture where that put her outside the moral pale. She would have been disenfranchised because of the way she'd lived. And anyone else standing on the outside would have seen that all of the power lay with Jesus. But Jesus lays aside his power and he makes himself a recipient. He makes himself vulnerable by asking her for something. "Please give me a drink," he says. And as he acknowledges his thirst and his need for water, as he acknowledges a need that at that moment in time he couldn't meet because presumably he wasn't able to draw water from the well and she could, he changes the power balance. And making himself vulnerable opens a conversation with that woman, which turns into the longest conversation with Jesus that we have recorded in the Gospels. It's a dialogue that eventually changes her life and her perception, but also a whole community, because she very quickly becomes someone who goes to tell her whole community about what Jesus has done for her. Let's pray. Jesus, when we take a moment to reflect, we thank you that you made yourself vulnerable for us. You made yourself vulnerable when you came as a baby. You made yourself vulnerable in your interactions with others and in your conversations with them. And you made yourself vulnerable in your death. We thank you that through your vulnerability, God's power was made obvious and perfect. And we pray that you'll give us the courage to make ourselves vulnerable so that your power can be made perfect in our weakness. Amen. Thank you very much.